So thank you.
Thank you. Well, that was a very impressive act to follow, especially considering we just started our training center. So bear that in mind. All right, I'm really excited and absolutely thrilled to talk to you today about building omics skills through the Common Fund Data Ecosystem Training Center. I'm Allissa Dillman, and I'm the Training and Engagement Director for the center. So before I can talk to you or sort of jump into what the CFDE Training Center does, I kind of have to pull back a little bit and tell you a little bit about what the Common Fund even does at NIH, because that's sort of the group that we're a part of. So the Common Fund is this part of this whole data ecosystem, and it supports these really ambitious cross-cutting programs that are really designed to spark innovation and accelerate discovery in sort of a cross-cutting interdisciplinary fashion, all focused on biomedical and behavioral research. These initiatives bring together researchers across multiple, both like NIH institutes and centers. So there's a bunch of collaboration internally, but then externally throughout different fields and centers and universities and things like that. And like I said, it's really meant to be these like big, hard problems that we need interdisciplinary work to tackle. And while these programs are incredibly impactful on their own, they weren't necessarily connected. Like each project was like its own field, its own scientific question, its own thing. However, they often had sort of similar data types, tools, organizational structures. So even though they weren't necessarily originally intended to be connected in any way, shape, or form, they were all sort of like their own thing. There was this sort of realization of, oh, actually, there are through lines through all of these like big, exciting projects. So how can we sort of start to tie these things together? And that's why we have the Common Fund Data Ecosystem, or CFDE, which is I'm going to stick with from here on out. And the idea is it's really meant to enhance the accessibility, interoperability, and usability of both the data and the tools generated across all of these different data fund programs. Where's my pointy pointer? There it is. Fantastic. So in both the gray spoke and the white spoke, these are just the majority of the CFDE programs, but you see lots of programs that you probably know, right? Things like HubMap, Kids First, GTAX. These are all part of these programs doing all these really cool things, pumping out all these data, tools, people, communities. So at the end of the day, there's a structure here that's like, how do we connect all of these different activities going on? Well, we have these sort of overarching coordinating centers, right? And they're sort of anchored on different aspects of what we create. So obviously, the cloud workspace implementations about generating like the whole cloud platform that will help with analysis. We've got the data resource centers because each of these programs have their own data resource centers. So this one kind of coordinates with all of them. Obviously, we're trying to coordinate the training across. And the idea is, right, so these centers will now be the hubs, and they'll help kind of interconnect all of the different programs and projects, and will grow, share, and connect, and really build this like thriving, living, breathing ecosystem together. So now that I've set the stage on what the heck this even is, now I can talk to you about what we are at the training center. So as I mentioned, we are very new. We just received our funding at the end of September. And so I'm going to first tell you sort of our initial goal that we pitched to be the training center. We knew we needed to act as this central hub for training. And we really wanted to provide this comprehensive support, sort of like to really support learners along their entire journey. And we also wanted to help sort of expand the CFDE user base, right? Because if we sort of help them understand what's there, become new users. And we wanted to do this through, a whole bunch of different community building and engagement activities. So the first thing we need to do, especially because we were like the new kids on the block, we were one of the newest centers in the programming. Some of these programs like GTEX have been around forever. We're very new, and a lot of people across CFDE are already doing some aspects of training, right? They've done some workshops, they've built content, and they've been around for a really long time. So the responsible thing for us to do was really to make sure, all right, let's take stock of like everything, all the wealth of training that's already present, both internal to CFDE, but also in the broader community, right? Things that all of you are building in the omics training space. So we did a landscape analysis with the idea of like seeing like, what's working, what's missing, where can we improve? So that way, instead of sort of, recreating the wheel, we're hopefully actually building things that are connecting what's already there and then filling holes where we need to. So the methodology for this landscape assessment was using a mixed methods approach. So obviously we reviewed the existing CFDE training, but we also did a bunch of key informant interviews, both with CFDE subject matter experts, but also learners. We also trainers across CFDE, and we also did a mentor survey for our OARU consortium. So people who aren't necessarily a part of the CFDE at all right now. And then we also did something called academic engagement, where basically you're looking at all of the publications across all of the different CFDE data sets to see sort of like what people are using it for so far. And then we did a bunch of information gathering with all of the different programs. Like I said, there's over 20 different programs that are part of CFDE. Each one of them have a data center, like talking with them about what they're doing. So I don't necessarily have time to get into sort of the nitty gritty of all the different things that we found, but I did try to kind of bin them into 4 overarching ideas that kind of came up over and over and over again. The first is just the complexity, right? Like I said, we have over 20 different programs, and each of those programs creates tons of different data types. I mean, Spark alone creates like imaging data, clinical data, omics data, all this different data coming from all these different programs. It's hugely complex. There's also, there is mentorships that are across all these different programs. There's also, bunches of different resources that being created and different ways that they engage. So what did we actually find about the problems or issues, struggles? I shouldn't say problems. That sounds super negative. So learners talked a lot about being overwhelmed by just the number of places they had to go to find things, right? Like each program has its own webpage, its own platform, its own everything. So it's just really hard for them to even know where to get started as well, right? So it's like being dropped in an ocean and be like, swim in a direction, but you don't know where land is in any direction. Have fun. So there was really that struggle and that need to be like, if I am doing this and I want to do that, how do I get there? The other thing is, they really wanted more diverse and interactive learning materials. A lot of the things are a little bit static. They're, videos or sort of just a notebook, and there's not really a connection between the things. And they also wanted a lot more bite-sized modules so they can, in their downtime on the bench, they can kind of quickly look at something, do something, learn something. For the summer programs, there was barriers around both mentee preparedness. So a lot of times for these summer programs, folks were getting mentees that sort of spanned their skill level, and they were really kind of struggling to match. But on the flip side, mentor availability, right? So trying to find people with enough technical expertise and free time to support these programs. Trainers themselves also found it challenging to maintain learning engagement. Also, there was a lot of issues around understanding like assessment of learning progress. A lot of folks that are doing training are sort of like they do a one of, and it's not really part of their main focus. So they were, struggling with that. Also to ensure that like the, training that they're doing actually translates to real world applications. And the other thing was, there wasn't really there's not a centralized place for training or materials or assessment or any of these things. They're just kind of all over the place. And then learners also expressed that, okay, I took a workshop. Now what? Where do I go? What? I've got nothing. I did my workshop, but I still don't really know where to go from here. So like really having continued support beyond that initial training session, but also a lot of folks who were, subject matter experts were like, I'm here. Where do I find my resources that match? Got a machine learning expert. They're like, I need data in this shape, in this form, resources in this way, and I can't find them. So those are sort of like the overarching things that we found. So now I'm going to break down like our, and again, we're just starting at this because we did a landscape analysis, which took a while. But this is how we're trying to approach each of those 4 sort of overarching pillars. So the first is the complexity idea. And so what we come up with is a how-to seminar series with the idea that it provides instruction to various omics and omics-related topics, tools, and techniques. And each of these is basically like, it's meant to be a bite-size introduction to that particular topic. So if I'm talking about genomics, it's like, what the heck even is it? What kinds of techniques, what kinds of tools are used? And then we try to highlight a CFDE data set that actually has that data type so they can kind of go poke around. As you see here, we've got a bunch of them. And we also didn't just do data types. We also talked about things that are, adaptable across all omics, like statistical significance. We featured data and tools from GTEx, xRNA, HubMap, Kids First, 4D Nucleome, Lynx, MotorPack, Senet, Spark, and the Metabolomics Workbench. And then we are currently partnering with GlycoScience for an introduction to glycomics. That's kind of the last one that we're wrapping up right now. And hopefully the idea behind this is it'll help biology folks brush up on the omics aspect, but also computer scientists brush up a little on the biology parts. We also have a Decoding the Data Ecosystem podcast. I am by no means a podcast expert, but that's another thing that we thought would be really useful because it's sort of these nice casual conversations, both about what the heck we're doing at the CFDE and the things we're making, but also, conversations around omics ideas in general, right? So we've got 7 episodes available, and we discuss everything from sort of what the different centers at CFDE does, but we also talk about things like reproducibility using CFDE Kids First data, FAIR principles across all these different data resource centers. And also, if you're really interested in doing a deeper dive into our landscape assessment, we do have a chat about it in our latest. You can find these anywhere that you get podcasts, I don't know, Spotify, Amazon podcasts, iHeartRadio, any of those places. We also, so we get to the mentorship implementation. So we really wanted to sort of recreate our own pilot for what we think a mentorship program could be. So we've come up with the Decoding the Data Ecosystem Collaborative. And this is a little bit different because what we have is we actually have this comprehensive mentorship system where we have a technical mentor. So that's one of the data center staff. So these are people who deeply understand their data, their tools, what's actually being built, what those data structures are, all those nitty gritty technical questions. They're going to be sort of that point person. But then we also have the mentee team because it's actually 2 people. It's the faculty PI. And part of that being, students, they come and go, they're constantly moving where they are. So we wanted a really stable point for every one of our university collaborations. So we thought the PI would be a good place for that. But also, we can only support so many students, whereas the PI, hopefully they can integrate this in CFDE into their, other things they're training, other students, their mentors. And then the student, obviously they get the benefit of a summer program, summer project, but they also get 2 mentors, right? People with very different backgrounds, very different expertise, and they get to kind of experience both of those things. If you're interested more in sort of what CFDE mentorship programs are across the program, not just ours, we are running a virtual symposium in August. You can find it on our website if you like to see a little bit more about what we do. For the resource implementation, we created an online learning dashboard. So the seminar series has been incorporated on there. We actually have knowledge checks integrated so students can see or learners can see if they've kind of got those concepts. We also can organize our content into things like type or difficulty, basically any flags and tags we can think of. We're currently building more training content putting in more training content by partnering with the other CFD programs to integrate what they've already built. So that way those trainings aren't everywhere. We also have a program where we'll hopefully start to ask for all of you for training content we can put in there. And as we add more content, we'll then have the ability to create actual learning paths as well. Finally, I'd like to highlight that we did a fair and open source hackathon in May at the BioIT World Conference in Boston. And so the idea behind this is really about that engagement aspect, but also about hitting people who are, on the spectrum of intermediate, beginner, advanced, because we have professionals in both the life sciences and very, very technical professionals, and they're coming together and kind of sharing tools and things like that. We had 5 teams and they spanned these 4 different data sets across CFDE. So HubMap, GTEx, MotorPack, and IDG. They also pulled tools and information from the Knowledge Center Data Resource Center. So, really trying to grab all different aspects of CFDE. And here are the different topics that ended up happening. If you're interested in learning more about what they did for their projects, their code, all that fun stuff, you can check it out in our GitHub repository. So what's next for CFDE? Obviously, we very much want to expand our asynchronous material in the online learning dashboard. And like I said, there will hopefully be calls going out soon where we have funding to support some of you to make some training on there. We also want to expand to modular in-person workshops at the academic institutions that we partner with, because I find that sort of piloting things in person can help me sort of then build asynchronous training as well, and kind of doing that iterative process between both. And then expanding our podcast topics, expanding and enhancing our engagement. We're going to start doing quarterly open office hours and ongoing just evaluation curriculum development. So just as a summary, right, we've got podcasts, hackathons, workshops. We've got this whole collaborative. We've got our online learning dashboard. We're hopefully well on our way. And if you would like to find out more about just CFDE in general, you can check out that website. If you want to learn about us as a training center, our website just went live yesterday, thanks to me needing to do this talk. So that lit a fire under our butts. And if you have any questions, interested in collaborating or being a podcast guest, or if you have a podcast, I would love to chat with you. So email us. But yeah, so that's it from me. Thank you so much.
I think we've got time for one question, maybe. Any?
Great talk, Allissa. I'm curious about if you're impacted at all by the cuts at NIH. Like, I'm sorry I'm bringing it up, but.
So technically, we are funded by an other transaction authority. We're technically not a grant, which means, well, in theory, we are meant to be a 5-year program. We need to renew every year. However, our wonderful program officers have been doing a ton of finagling, and it looks like we will at least get year 2 and 3 funding now. But after that, politics.
Well, thank you again.